And if I go back into my DMs, I'm pretty sure that I can see her asking me like, "Hey, um, what are your opinions on me from practice? Let's talk about this, and this." And one big focal point that I'm pretty sure she's carried into every single team afterwards is that she was always looking to become this team player.
Hey guys, this is Pedro Romero, and I'm back bringing you another episode of Tales from Texas. For this latest edition of this series, I talked to Iroo, a pro Valorant head coach who currently coaches Team Fish Taco Silvxs, one of the many North American Game Changers teams who last recently competed within the NAGC Series 3 open qualifying phase for the year 2023. In this episode, we're going to be talking to him about his career in Pro Valorant and the teams that he has coached, both in the present and also in the past, which includes Ariana, Grande, Perfume, and then Velaris. And then within that time, we're going to be talking to him about him coaching a few players that stood out from his whole batch of teams that he has led, such as Florescent and Starbound, people that I have talked to in the past throughout my career covering GC as a journalist. With that said, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and please enjoy the video/audio. Before we cover exactly who you are, yeah, who you are and what you do, I just want to cover exactly your background life and exactly as someone who is from Texas, exactly where, if you want to share, in Texas, do you hail from and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. So I am from Texas. I was born and raised there, and I've been living there for about, I would say, 23 years. Just recently, I just moved over to Florida with my aunt and my uncle, just for a little bit of like a vacation and just to get out and do some work outside of just like my local area in Texas. But I am from the Houston area, and it's pretty diverse. I'm not gonna lie. It's like uh, not really too big on esports, which I think is kind of funny. I think Dallas is more akin to esports and everything like that. But yeah, I come from Houston.
Yeah, and I remember back then when I was starting out on the esports space, I was just trying to look around locally as to exactly what is the sort of climate like, the level of importance it has in esports. Not as much when I was like studying in college and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, um, I dabbled a little bit in the University of Houston back then, like during the early days, like 2019 ish, in which they were starting to like work within the esports department. But yeah, you mentioned about the whole your view of the climate of esports in Houston specifically. Um, has that sort of climate changed? Has that grown? Has that stayed the same since the time you started up until now?
I think it's grown a bit because of the younger generation coming in. I noticed that whenever I was back in high school during like 2018, League was everywhere. So League of Legends was my game before Valorant. There was a ton of watch parties and stuff like that at local internet cafes down in Chinatown, and my friends and I would always go and have some fun. And then recently they had LCS last year. Um,
Yes.
I believe it was EG against 100 Thieves, and I went with my friends, and it was crazy. And I was like, "Wow, there's so many people here that are in the Houston area that actually enjoy this." Um, and aside from that, I mean, I haven't really noticed anything pertaining to Valorant in specific. I think that Houston as a whole could be a very good center for LANs, various different events, but unfortunately, it doesn't really seem like any of that is coming our way.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of just finding someone who has the initiative to launch events and just start growing and cultivating a scene within this city in particular. Um, because Houston, believe it or not, has pretty well known individuals that live within the city. I think the first one that comes to mind is Ethan, because I know that he spent some time living here. outside of like his competitive days. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of just finding that that spark. Is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. Yeah, and going a little bit into to your high school, like you mentioned a little bit of your high school life. What exactly did you do in high school? Were you the kind of person that just stayed in your own lane and just focused on whatever you wanted to do, or were you more proactive? You know, attending various student clubs, extracurricular activities. You know, what was that time like for you?
So high school was a pretty interesting experience for me socially. During my freshman year, I was like, "Yo, new school, new me. Nobody from middle school is gonna know me, anything like that." So I joined the basketball team. I joined my robotics club. They had like National Honor Society. I was in that, and that all kind of just honestly increased throughout the years. So every single year that I went through high school, I was part of various different clubs. I recall during my senior year, I wanted to challenge myself, so I took, I'm pretty sure it was 6 AP courses. I didn't really pass the exams, but I just kind of took it just to take it. And I found myself in a lot of leadership roles and a lot of positions where I could also help to teach the younger generation. So, for example, during my senior year, I was a part of a robotics team called FTC, and then there was FRC, which are more like they're like bigger robots as opposed to like the FTC smaller robots and stuff like that. And it was my goal throughout that entire senior year to kind of talk to the freshmen and be like, oh, hey, look, this is like the routine that we do. This is the maintenance. This is what you guys can do, and trying to inspire them. Um, Led to my motivation, I guess, eventually leading up till now to kind of like teach others. But I'm also very competitive. So, like I said, with basketball, I stuck to that for about 3 years. Through my junior year, it got pretty hectic trying to schedule everything. So, I didn't really continue it into my senior year. From junior or for freshman to sophomore year, I was part of the JV team, and then junior year, I was part of my varsity team. Um, and I'd say I'm very competitive. Heck, even now, like with coaching and stuff like that, I like to compete through my players. So I like to make sure that like, they're not doing something that I wouldn't see myself doing. You know,
Mhm. What position did you play in basketball? Out of curiosity.
I played shooting guard.
Okay, okay. So you were the spot up shooter, you know, residing in the corner of the baseline, just looking for
Yep.
shots.
Yeah, just looking for shots, trying to pass into my point or take from my point, pass it into my power forwards, and just try to get as many points as possible. It was a lot of fun.
Do you remember what your yearly averages were like during your time? Like, do you know how do you remember how many like points per game you made, and how many 3-point shots you made?
Not at all. I just recall I was always a starter, and I was practically in throughout all the first 3 quarters until we realized at the end, like, okay, are we winning? Are we losing? So our coach was like, all right, depending on the outcome, we're gonna just sit you guys out for a little bit and just kind of like run on from there. I do recall my tryouts though, like I practiced a lot, like from middle school into the summer of my freshman year, I practiced a lot. My dad helped out, and come freshman year, I was just able to make it in through day one. I didn't have to go through the 5 different days of tryouts.
Hmm. And amidst all of that time, it would be fair to say that you started taking on top of just focusing on your academics and your extracurricular activities. I guess I'm curious on as to exactly when did esports and gaming and when did that start coming into the picture for yourself?
So up until my sophomore year, I was just playing on console. I didn't really have any like Xbox Live or anything like that. So a lot of my games were very single player based, and I would sometimes go to my cousin's house, and he actually introduced me to Halo way back in the day. Like I was like 6 years old, started playing Halo, started getting into Call of Duty and stuff like that, and that kind of grew my competitive drive. Come sophomore year, this is gonna sound kind of funny, but there was a girl that had a crush on me, and she had a broken laptop, and she was like, "Hey, there's this game called League of Legends. I kind of want to play it with you." And she gave me the laptop, and she's like, "The only caveat is that it doesn't close, so I had to walk around with it open the entire time." But she had me download League, started playing League, and it kind of derived, I guess, from my competition built within my school. So ever since I came in through freshman year, in my engineering classes where we had a computer lab, it was always a constant competition whenever we had free time to play games against like the upperclassmen. So come sophomore year, everybody in my high school started playing League. So it's always like, oh, who's better than who? And I was the late bloomer. I came
Mm-hmm.
in and I was like, okay, well, I need you guys to teach me what rules there are, this, and this. And everybody was like, we're not going to teach you, dude. We don't have the time. And back then we never used Discord. I think we used like Curse. And we were sitting there one night and I was just like, dude, okay, if you guys aren't gonna help me, I'll go figure it out myself. I picked up jungle, and I remember there's this guy in my class that would kind of ego me, and I asked him, I was like, what jungler do you think's the hardest one at the time? And he was like, oh, I think it's Rengar, but you should probably play like Warwick, which is pretty simplistic. I was like, no, I got it. I'll go learn some Rengar, and through that, I was able to just build up my skill throughout my sophomore year, and then junior year we did a lot of in houses and 10 mans and stuff like that. Um, so that's where it grew, and then I would say that because of Riot, um, and the way that they kind of sanction their different events and grow hype throughout the year, I just got into watching LCS. So it was NA LCS or just LCS at the time. Um, I picked a bunch of different players that I really liked. I really looked up to players like Bjergsen and Double Lift because they were all on TSM. And at the time, I was a huge TSM fan. Um, and so through that, I was like, okay, well, what's TSM? So I kind of like went into this whole process of, okay, well, let me figure out all these different orgs. I found out that there were different regions. I found out about Counter Strike, and Counter Strike I was never really like into, and I also never really played it too much at the time, aside from just surfing. But I respected the European scene a lot because I still kind of hold this idea today that I do believe that the work ethic there in Europe has kind of been set in stone and consistently gets revitalized throughout the year. Where I feel like in NA, it's kind of like, okay, well, what big talent can we keep on a roster, not what new talent can we foster and grow. So I think that's like the two different types of distinctive just views on esports that both regions offer. But come junior year, senior year, hell, even into college, I really wanted to compete. So every single chance that I got, I was either playing at my local internet cafe. Unfortunately, it closed due to COVID. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I was there just playing a bunch of lands, and before I knew it, I found out that Valorant was releasing. So I quit League.
And yeah, and what are some of the best moments you felt you had from those days of just playing in those small lands in League of Legends and just trying to cultivate something from a hobby ish to now sort of dabbling as a player. You know, what were some of the biggest takeaways slash stories that you remember most fondly of?
So I recall, I think it was the 2018 Worlds or 2019 Worlds. They had their final land before COVID. I decided to show up that night after like hanging out with my friends at like main event, which is just like another Dave and Buster's for those that don't know. And we ended up going to the cafe like 2 hours earlier. The owners knew us and they let us in. We got to sit down and have some fun. And I recall meeting one of my friends, and at the time I didn't know who she was. And I recall kind of like there's way too many people. The entire area was packed. So I'm like walking through the aisle and I accidentally almost knock over her PC. She looks at me. We make eye contact, and she blurted out something. I'm not going to say what it was, but then like later throughout the night, we became friends. Um, and I recall her asking like, "Hey, they're going to have this next LAN event coming up, in a month from now. Let's go compete. Let's find some players. Let's do this and this." And it's very reminiscent of like the Premier system now in Val, where it's like you just kind of pick whoever you need. We had a few scrims and stuff like that. We go in and we won the entire tourney, and
Oof.
that was a grid defining moment for me because there were a lot of higher ranked players. At the time, I was just gold. So there were a lot of challenger players, a lot of master players, and I was jungling. I was just doing what I'd been doing since sophomore year of high school, and just having a lot of fun with that. And aside from just like League of Legends, I was also competing in Splitgate at the time, if you're aware of that game.
Yeah.
And that was prior to the big fiasco of them kind of like just shutting down the game, then rebooting it, saying, "Oh, it's season 0." And I mean, players like myself had been playing 2 years prior, so it was just kind of weird. But I was also playing that from the internet cafe as well, so that kind of became the hub of my esports drive, and I feel like that's what's very important. That's what's actually lacking, in my opinion, in Houston. I feel
Mm,
like there's not too many areas to kind of cultivate this want from the youth. I feel like a
mm-hmm.
lot of kids grow up and they're like, "Oh shit, Fortnite! You know, it's more accessible than literally anything. It's on your iPad, your Switch." And then they hear about like Valorant and stuff, but there's no events. Every time I've heard of like a big event, it's a big event is probably at the like Reliant Stadium, um, and there's not really a community anymore. I'd say
Yep.
online there is, but I haven't been to a an event in a while.
think I think as you mentioned a little bit, I think there's a reason as to why such a dynamic in trying to make more in-person events in Houston, uh, 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 make more of that happen. But one of the things that kind of destroyed that was kind of in a way COVID, but other things. And so about exactly going into deeper length as to why that sort of why this current climate exists in Houston regarding esports. Of course, COVID is one thing, but what do you feel is the biggest issues besides just COVID and just all of the main things that people are focusing on as one of the main reasons for how it turns out how it turned out for Houston esports.
Um, I feel like whenever it comes down to Houston esports, a major factor aside from COVID is just the fact that there's kind of like a lack of interest, I guess, from the community. I just went to Cali a few months back with my org, and everything there is like esports. I mean, it's literally the esports hub of the U.S. in my opinion. Um, and it's just here in Houston, you don't really hear too much about it. I mean, everybody here is like, oh yeah, we got the museum district. We have a bunch of restaurants and stuff like that, but there's never really an integration unless it's like a pop-up event. Because I notice it's the same exact thing with like anime conventions or anything of the sort. It's like, yes, we have these big moments, but there's never anything smaller that leads up into it. And I don't really recall which game it was. I think it might have been Overwatch. I saw an ad for it whenever I was like 15, that they were bringing competitions to your local like movie theater, and I think you brought like a laptop and you got to sit there and compete in the movie theaters. That is the only time I've ever seen um, an esport ever try to have a wider source of just players showing up to wherever playing. And I think that the only thing I've ever seen here in Houston that was actually pretty good whenever I was younger, I think I was like 9 years old, was Beyblades for some reason. They had
Hmm.
everything. Like every Toys R Us was a hub for a tournament almost every other weekend. And I was like, dude, imagine that, but for Valve, for League, like it's just again, it's just this whole idea that why go outside and compete against each other when you could just do it all online and at home. So it's just like all these lands. Like right now, I'm in Florida, and I hear, oh, there's a Miami land, and there's this, and this, and it's like everything's always brought to these other states. Things need to be brought to Texas, but I also think that it's a fear of the environment. Because in Texas, whenever you hear Texas, it's very old fashioned. Not too many people actually play games. I mean, everybody around my age group, I talk to some people, they don't even know what Call of Duty is. I don't know why. Um, they don't know what Valorant is. They don't know what Counter Strike is. So there's a lot of people that I guess grow up more down south. I went there for college for a year at Corpus Christi, and nobody there played games. Like I'm talking, I go into a writing class, and we all have computers, and I'm
Mhm.
typing like average. I don't even know, maybe like I don't even know. I just type pretty fast. So like I'm sitting there. They're like, "All right, guys, you guys got 2 hours to type up this essay," and I'm just done in like 10 minutes. And everybody else is like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing." And it's like, pretty sure it's just the way that you grow up.
Yeah. And I think in situations like this, when you're trying to look at or trying to give a good view as to what the climate is like in esports in Texas and also in Houston as well, I think you gotta really look deep and hard as to actually finding these kinds of communities that you're looking to find and also grow. Because like we have a bit of collegiate teams contributing to esports and just working in esports. I believe also the U of H had a Valorant a GC team as well a few years ago. Maybe last year, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it just speaks to how scarce or how sparse it is, or I'm not sure if that's the right word, in finding people that actually care about esports and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's just something that we have to take care of
Yeah.
in the future. Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like I've been talking to my friends about this. Like, whenever it comes down to the greater Houston area, I think it's more so about finding the diamonds in the rough that matter the most here. I feel like everybody that I have seen and met that's pretty in tune with esports, they're all amazing people. I've never really run into anybody aside from Smash players that are kind of weirdos. But I think that's pretty much just a moral of the story. I think other people that I've met in the Val scene, which is very little, that do hail from Houston, they're all pretty decent people. um, I don't know if that has anything to play in it, and maybe I don't know. It's just maybe the nicest people are those that play video games or whatnot. I don't want to make any correlations, but that is what I definitely have noticed. So just like yourself, like everybody that I meet usually has some sort of job in the scene or some sort of like career path that they're trying to pursue. With me, it was being a player in like Splitgame and stuff like that. Then I came over towards Val, and now I'm doing coaching and stuff like that. So I feel like everybody is always looking to do something else, and that's probably another problem is that everybody that is interested in the scene does eventually move to these other esports like hubs in terms of states or locations. So maybe they go from Houston to Dallas, or if you're a streamer, you go from Houston to Austin, and you get a big house and all these different gaming houses and stuff like that. I do want to say though that the one esport I have seen that does foster a lot of attention from Houston is Call of Duty. I
Mhm.
think Call of
Yeah.
Duty has been one of the biggest games of all time, so that's probably why, and it's more accessible. That's probably why, but I definitely have heard more people talk about that and be more interested in running local tournaments and stuff like that.
What about sports games exactly? Because I know Castro he's revered as one of the top FIFA streamers in the world, and he's from Houston as well. And
Oh, really? Hmm.
yeah, and I feel there's the same sort of level with respect to Call of Duty as it is to like other games such as FIFA, Madden, NBA 2K, these kinds of games. Because of course, with Houston as it is, it's a traditional sports hub with all of the teams that we have in
Yeah.
the city with the Rockets, Astros, and Texans. Right there, you can see it on the back of the wall right there. So yeah, so yeah. Going back, taking the focus back onto yourself. You mentioned Splitgate, and that's one thing that I wanna cover specifically. I want you to walk me through exactly what is Splitgate and what your career was like during in that game specifically.
Okay, so the devs, I don't know, they're kind of flip floppy on this, but it's basically Halo, but with portals. So it's very inspired from Halo back in the early days of the QA. So like 2018, 2019, definitely had a lot of Halo inspiration from the guns to the movement. And eventually I popped into like maybe early 2019. I wasn't really too much into it in 2018. But that was back when they were doing like alpha testing and stuff like that. So basically the way the game works is you got your gun, you got your starter, whether it be your pistol, your carbine, and you have some portals. So if you played like Portal 1, Portal 2, anything that goes through it comes out the other end. It's very velocity based. So if you were to just run through a bunch of them and then jump through another one and fly halfway across the map, you could do that. It was a very fun game. And I think what attracted me to it was how dynamic it was. So it's just like with the finals right now. It's like I like really big dynamic based games. And a lot of the people that I was playing with at the time migrated over to the finals because it's practically just the same stuff, just movement, shooting. Um, but one thing that I really liked about it was just the community. Like at the time, the community was very small, and they were hosting a lot of local tourneys and stuff like that. Um, just through their Discord. A few were like saw scrim monthly and stuff like that, and I just came in. I was like, "Hey, look, I'm a free agent. Don't really know what I'm doing. My name was even Iroo at the time. I just chose like whatever I wanted to." um, and just ended up competing, and they ended up sponsoring or getting sponsored by I think it was called Jackbox or something like that, and they would basically just host these monthly like tournaments in game. So what's pretty cool about it is that you could play in those tourneys by yourself. A lot of the time, it wasn't just player v player. Sometimes it was like you queue comp. And your goal is a kill race. So whoever at the end of the 2 hours has the most kills, you get a cash out. And it's very reminiscent of Warzone in a way. So I don't know if
Mhm.
you're too familiar with the Warzone scene, but you can queue up. You know, whoever has the most wins, whoever has the most kills, all that stuff like factors into it. And then whenever it came down to actually competing on different teams, that was where I learned again that this whole like leadership skill and want for leadership kind of took over. I found myself in a lot of positions where I was like our end game leader. And I'd spend countless of hours like on the game. I think the second I started playing it, I was on it for a unhealthy amount of time. I'm not even going to say how long, but I was just in there trying to figure out as much stuff as possible. I was also a QA tester, so I was just trying to break the game, so to speak, trying to figure out like, okay, well, if I go fast enough, can I go out of bounds here? What type of different bugs exist? Everything else like that. So I was just very in tune with the game, and unfortunately, they decided to close it. I believe it was like in 2020 or 2021. Um, and then that kind of flushed out all the old players, and then they decided to reboot the game and say, okay, guys, it's season 0. We have a few orgs that are backing it, and I think there was only like 2 players from the time that I played that actually got signed to those orgs, but it was very short lived. It wasn't anything super special. I think Moist Esports was like the biggest name that was there, um, but yeah, it just kind of died out, unfortunately.
Yeah, just kind of reached to the point of no return for that specifically. And um, about the whole shutdown thing, exactly how bad was it to the effect of it affecting the esports scene of Splitgate? Because I can assume that, although I don't know too much about Splitgate and its esports
Mhm.
scene, I can say that it's sort of kind of small in regards to other much more bigger FPS titles and its a respective scenes. So how much of a blow did that play into the esports scene of Splitgate regarding the whole server shutdown and then reboot and stuff like that?
So I think it just discouraged a lot of people. It's kind of like if you are going to school for medicine and you're 2 years into your 4 year program before you go into your next 4 years to 8 years. And then all of a sudden your school burns down and they're like, oh, yeah, we're not going to continue with anything. Like your credits, they're gone. Everything's gone. So, in relation to our game, a lot of our progress was kind of flushed down the toilet. There were a few casters too that were there that were pretty big in Val. I know that there was one guy, I don't remember his name. Unfortunately, he cast in EU and he's got heterochromia. I just forget his name, but he came from Splitgate. There are a few other casters that came from there, and there's a few other players that are relevant in other games. But I definitely do feel like I just call it like the big flush. Unfortunately, it just sucked because everything that everybody had built up over time was just gone, and I think it was due to failed marketing and also the fact that the game skill ceiling is way too high. So unfortunately, it didn't really have good like skill based matchmaking in a way. It did for a few months, and then the devs actually changed it. So what would happen is seasoned players like myself would come in. And we're playing against like Summit 1G or Doctor Disrespect or something because they're doing like a big Twitch event, and we play against them, we beat them, so our MMR goes up, and unfortunately we're capped out, like we can't queue, and if we do queue, it takes about 5 hours to get into a game when all of us are online. And then the devs were like, okay, well, this kind of sucks, so let's go ahead and implement a system where if you wait longer than, I think it was like 20 or 30 minutes, we'll just toss you into any queue. And it just
Mm-hmm.
became a problem of like bullying the younger players. um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think the devs were just like, yeah, we don't really want this. So that's why we're going to go ahead and pause the game, do a reboot. And nobody was just interested. All of our progress, all of our
Mm-hmm.
history was just erased.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that eventually then led to you being in Valorant and just starting a career
Yeah.
there, and now going into well, before we go into Valorant, your name Iroo,
Yeah.
what's that from? Where did that come from?
So a lot of people think it's from Avatar. It's not, but I can kind of see why because I did have a spin on it for my Twitch username. It was, or it still is. It's General Iroo,
Yep.
but it's actually my initials. So I don't really want to leak my name, but my first name is Isaiah, and every single other letter is an initial. So I have two middle names, um, one last name, one first name. So it's just my initials. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay, because I thought it must have been like yeah, from fictional characters like Iroh, but it's a very interesting way to figure out your gamer name. And
Oh yeah, no, I was sitting down for days on end struggling. I was like I had a pen and paper and I was like, okay, I like this and this. This stuff worked in the past and I just couldn't find anything that worked and I was like, wait, this kinda has a ring to it. And I also really like the character from Avatar, so in a way I guess it kind of was inspired by that, but I just liked how he was always the wise one out of the bunch, always willing to help out, stuff like that.
yeah, trying to like duplicate a guy like Iroh, a legend like Iroh, a god, one might say, like Iroh. So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate the your you striving to reach that same level. And now going into Valorant, okay, when did that start going into the picture? Because you mentioned about getting into Valorant earlier on in the conversation, but exactly when did you then decide to now start putting in all of your focus onto Pro Valorant?
So I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I heard that Val was coming out, it was I think around the summertime of April, or sorry, the summertime in 2020, or a little bit beforehand. And I was like, "Ooh, okay, this game looks cool. It's made by Riot. I already like League. Apparently, it's like this game called Counter Strike that I've barely played." And I was like, "Okay, well, let me go boot up Counter Strike. Let me see if I like this game." And before I knew it, I was in I think Summit 1G's chat. That's where I got my key, and I was like, "Cool, dude. I got this. Let's download it. Let's boot it up. Let's play." And I told myself, I said, I am going to go into this just like how I did with Splitgate. So just like I had said prior, I was always grinding out customs on Splitgate, just trying to learn new stuff. The second Valorant came out, a few of my Splitgate friends decided to have like a 10 man, and we were just in it day in day out, just constantly playing, trying to figure out new stuff. There were a lot of early terms that weren't really defined yet, to my knowledge, because like I said, I never came from Counter Strike, so a lot of it was just me throwing darts at a target in the dark. So if something hit and I was like, okay, cool, this concept kind of works, then it is what it is. But I got into the esports side of Valorant, I think off of the very first like T1 Invitational. I played in their open quals. I got absolutely crapped on, but um, it opened my eyes because I think the team that beat me was Trade Like Pros, which ironically enough, like I think a few months after I decided, or maybe a year later, I was a coach there. But they were the team that beat me, and I was like, okay, well, what is this whole like TLP thing? So I look it up, and I just made a Twitter at the time too. So I go on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, they have a Twitter account, and I'm like, oh, they claim to be like this tier 2 org, and I was like, what does tier 2 mean? So then it kind of went into this whole spiral of me asking different questions to actually try to get integrated to the scene, because these were all concepts that I wasn't familiar with prior. And a lot of my motivation again just came from honestly the game. Even now, the game is beautiful to me. I really like it. I like just being in the server, whether it be like learning or just playing or watching people play, etc. So from the early stages of the game, I really enjoyed it. Um, but I guess like one of the hardest things for me was that at the time, like my friends from high school, they did not want to touch Valorant. So I did go through a process where I was like, I kind of want to get good at this game. Like all my friends were like silver, and I think I placed plat during the beta. And I was like, okay, I need to go find an org to help me. So I joined the Valorant Ascent discords. Every single Valorant discord that I could join, and I went in their LFT section. I saw this one guy named Goose, and he was like, "Oh, hey, this team called Desperado Esports is looking for players. Hit us up." So I hit him up, and he's like, "Oh, well, this Saturday we have tryouts. Are you interested? And I was like, dude, I don't even know. I thought I was gonna go to the mall this Saturday. So come Saturday, my mall plans got canceled. I was like, hey, 2 more minutes until the tryouts start. Let me go join the server. And I go in there, and the rest was history. After that, I mean, it was a pretty like bad org, but at the time nobody really knew what was good, what was bad. I had no clue. I was just kind of just doing whatever to be around again a community of people that also wanted to compete. So I was there for about a year, and then afterwards started doing my coaching very like on and off, and trying to just join other teams and stuff like that. So it's just all curiosity. The second I see anything that interests me, like I'm just on it, and I don't stop.
Yes, everybody has to start somewhere, no matter how rough the foundation or the org that they're residing in is, or how shady it is
Yep.
as well. Just a matter of getting experience, just getting those reps in to then build that confidence and build that um knowledge and also skill level, expertise, stuff like that for the future, and now even to the present as well. And was it always your aim to be a coach from the jump, or were you initially focused as on being a player, and then you were then transferred over to the coaching role?
Um, so definitely not from the start. I'm not gonna lie. Like even now, I do always have a constant urge to want to get back into the game, as a player. But my initial goal at the start was just to be an IGL. So when I came to the org, they were like, "Oh, there's this term called an any game leader," and I was like, "What the heck is that?" And they're also like, "Oh yeah, we're also gonna need you to learn Cipher. I know you came in wanting to play Jet and Omen, but we're gonna stick you on Cipher. Okay, you got 10 minutes to learn him." So I went on YouTube, looked up a bunch of stuff. I spent like $10 to unlock him in the game, and I just kind of like wung it. And I made the team, but I get into the team, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you also need to learn the IGL." And I'm like, "Dude, what is this term?" So I sat there and I went on YouTube and I looked up, okay, what is IGLing? And I went through an entire list of videos. And a friend of mine that I met in the org, he hit me up and he's like, "Hey, there's this CS player named Steel, and he has a series about IGLing. You should watch it." And I was like, okay, cool. So I grabbed it. I started watching it, and even though CS isn't one to one eval, I was able to get a few concepts down. I think defaulting took like a year to be defined in my head, because I don't think Steel did a good job at talking about it. But that gave me a good foundation. And over the years, I really wanted to be a player. Um, I just kept grinding, and then I had a chance to kind of branch out into game changers as a coach. So I took all that grind time that I put in, all that knowledge throughout the entire year of me wanting to pursue it as a player, and just kind of took it a different direction.
Talk to me about the Valorant Invitational, because that is one event that you managed to win, if I'm correct in that assumption. You were That was one of the tournaments that you were able to win as a player. Correct me if I'm wrong, but talk to me about that
Oh, the the
tournament.
the the, the T1 Invitational, or
Uh,
which one? Because there was a invitational that I won, but it wasn't as a player. It was about a year ago as a coach.
yes, for those events, if you want to talk about it, yeah.
Okay, so basically, like a year ago, Team Silvxs Productions, they had, or I guess at the time it was Silvxs Productions. They didn't have a team. I was a coach for Ariana Grande Perfume, or AGP, as most people knew it as, or ARI, depending on how Riot wants us to abbreviate it. Um, and we got invited to this invitational, and we ended up beating TSM to end up winning it. And that kind of spiraled into my name getting out there and stuff, and that's the reason why TSX, the same company that hosted the tournament, reached out to me a year later to try to get me interested in coaching for them. That's actually why I got flown out to California recently. Um, but it was a lot of fun. I think that one of the major problems that I struggle with now as a coach is kind of like imposter syndrome in a way. I think it's something that nobody really talks about. because as a coach, there's really no way to compare yourself to other people. And growing up, a lot of people are like, "Oh, don't compare yourself to others," but I think of it as it's a good way to know if you're doing your job right. I feel like everybody, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, but I feel like my outlook on it is that I always kind of struggled with, okay, am I doing this right? What can I improve on? Just because I'm succeeding, is that me succeeding as a coach, or is that me succeeding because I have like a god tier player on my team? So
Hmm.
there were a lot of different moments in my career so far that I was like, okay, well, I'm succeeding, but why? So I would always question it. It wasn't up until that invitational and a few tournaments afterwards that I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing, because I went through so many different rosters. I've been on so many different teams, kind of growing up or growing this sort of foundation and this reputation. Um, and one of the other things that I'm not like too social with other coaches. I'm kind of just
Hmm.
like on my own. I have like a few friends that are doing like co-ed coaching and stuff like that. But aside from that, with like GC and stuff like that, I'm not really in the social circle. Um, and so it is definitely very hard to try to weigh in, what your value is. As of right now, I'm pretty much just over it. I know where my value lies, and I always know that I can improve and get better. So yeah, that's pretty much that. And then the T1 Invitational and everything that I did whenever I was a player. The only tournament we ever won on that org was just like a CMG like icebox tournament. That was crazy. But yeah, no, the T1 Invitational whenever I was a player got smacked by TLP and some other team, and I think the other team that smacked me had a cheater on it. Don't remember his name, but it was pretty big on Twitter. And at the time, I didn't really know what Twitter was, so I kind of got on. I was like, "Hey, this is a dude from our Haven match. Why is he in trouble?" And they're like, "Oh, the dude is cheating." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Um, so yeah, so that's pretty much that. There were also a lot of just like GC events and tourneys and just teams. The way that I like to view it is, especially with newer rosters, don't look at it as, okay, did we win or lose this tournament? I feel like that's not super productive. The way that I like to look at it is, okay, did we play exactly how we did in practice? What teams did we beat mostly? Because I feel like overcoming certain teams, whether it be free agent or even signed teams, is a very big uh, sorry, there's like a plane outside. I don't know if my mic's picking it up. But it's just a very big achievement no matter what. So I like to break it down and say, okay, guys, if we do this, this, and this, cool. Don't worry about the end of the tourney. Like, focus on the end goal, focus on the road that's right in front of you, and we'll see if we succeed later.
Hmm. You're probably one of the few people in the world that, at your age, doesn't really use Twitter as much, or didn't have any idea as to what Twitter was. Like, how did that
Yeah.
even happen? Like, for real, how did that even
So
happen?
honestly, I think it's because growing up, my parents, I'm not gonna lie, my parents were very not supportive of just like technology all around. Whenever I grew up, I didn't really have a computer. We had like a family all in one, but we barely did anything on it. I probably played games on like cartoonnetwork.com or something like that. Um, and so I didn't really have access to the internet. I did have a few consoles, and stuff like that, and then I didn't actually get a real smartphone until I was a sophomore in high school. So I think that's a big factor. I never used Instagram, I never used Snapchat, I never used Twitter. And it wasn't until that year, and I recall being in the cafeteria. My school wanted to do this big like PR thing, so they're like, "Hey guys, download Twitter." And I think at the time, like, we just made like really weird usernames, so it wasn't actually because I wanted it. It was just the school said, "Hey, at some famous people, take pictures of our school, tell them this, this, and this." Basically, just using us as PR, like just to get the
Yeah.
word out there. And then aside from that, I just never used it, because I never really felt the need to use social media. I
Hmm.
think it's really odd, kinda, because I mean everybody else around me was using like Snapchat, Instagram. I stopped using Instagram after my senior year of high school, and even then, I was never the type of person that likes to post a lot of like what's going on IRL. I feel like if people are that interested in me, they can ask me, they can call me. I don't need to take a picture of my food every time I eat or something like that and upload it to like Twitter. Um, so yeah, I never really used it up until that point. I only been using it ever since I started working in the scene.
And I feel like that sort of sentiment then morphed into, I feel, a necessity because social media is one thing that is needed to just get yourself out there and just get attention, and not just get attention for yourself, but also get attention for your teams and have
Hmm.
people want to play against you, scrim with you, and stuff like that. I, do you feel that sort of change in importance when it comes to using social media and stuff like that?
Oh, definitely. I feel like whenever I was coaching on AGP, that kind of taught me the importance of social media. A lot of the memes and stuff that we had put on there was all stuff that I came up with. And I recall us just sitting there and we're like, what's the best way to kind of gain followers? And again, it's not because we want to be popular. We never really cared. And I personally don't care about how many people are looking at me. It's more so what does that number allow me to do? So it allows me to network, allows more people to see who we are, what we do, what our passions are, and then hopefully, whether they sign us or don't or just know about us, like as long as we're in their heads, that's all I care about. Um, but I did definitely notice the importance of it. And then whenever it comes down to a coach, I guess that's like my only struggle is I don't really know, aside from like outsourcing my own content, how to necessarily get people interested, because my view on it is if I'm sitting here and I'm telling like the entire world all my little secrets, it lowers your value in a way, especially when you're trying to pursue being a competitive coach. Now, if I wanted to do what YouTubers like Wahoojan do, or like even OD26 and stuff like that, where they're not coaching teams and coaching specific players, of course I'd be on the grind. Like I'd be making content left and right. But I'm a very secretive person, especially whenever it comes down to just working with other people. Because in the past, I've had situations where people want to come in, they're like, "Hey, I'll be an assistant coach," and then they leave, and I figure out later down the line that they just went through our Discord channels, just copy and pasted a bunch of the Val plants and everything else like that, and just left. So it kind of grew like this trust issue.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and we'll get to it into GC, and of course, the I think the one the thing that paved the way in a way for you and your career and you just getting your name out there in the first place within North America and also in Pro Valorant in general is Ariana Grande Perfume, one of the few free agent teams that stood out and actually qualified for one main event phase um, last year, as in 2022 in Series 2 or 3. No, I think it's probably Series 2. You can correct me on that. And actually, I
Yeah,
actually
I was
did a
serious too.
I remember because I remember I did a press con. I recorded one of the press conferences for Ariana Grande Perfume
Yeah, I
before
remember
the
too.
actual before the actual main event phase, and I actually have it actually on my YouTube channel. Be sure for those of you watching, be sure to check it out. As a matter of fact, but yeah, it has a pretty well regarded team back then. You know, a core consisting of Wavy, Astralis, Miyu, Bella, and then Claudia, so to speak. Um, what was it? How do you view that time working with Ariana Grande Perfume, and also what made that team so good at that time under your direction as a coach?
Mm. So I honestly saw that team as um, a good stepping stone to know what it's like whenever you're working in the direction of success. So for a while, throughout different practices and stuff like that, we honestly grinded. I will say though that that first iteration of the roster, it was brought to my attention pretty recently, about 2 months ago, that allegedly, because I mean I never saw a riot statement about it. There was like a cheater on our team, which was Bella, and I've never heard of her since after that tourney. And I wasn't like I was kind of suspicious at the time because I just in practice and scrims I never really saw like a match between mechanics and like what she was thinking. So I was like, okay, well, this looks like it's a gold player, but with radiant mechanics, gold brain, um, and there were a lot of, and this is again kind of where the imposter syndrome started because we saw a lot of success, um, and I mean, I guess it was kind of recent because again, it was brought up to me. I noticed that a lot of signed coaches, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but a lot of signed coaches have a I guess like a priority over who gets information first, or just like side teams in general. So a few teams that we ended up beating went to Riot, I guess, because again they never made an official statement, and they found out that okay, well this girl's cheating. and apparently her account got terminated after the events at GC2. Now, I don't think that she necessarily was the main reason why we won everything, because again, I was in the coach slot, I was listening to the comms. She literally just did not speak. She did clutch up a few rounds, but that was a very big moment in my life that I was happy about. And then as of recently, I found that out, and I was thinking, okay, well, this kind of discredits the win. And like I
Yep.
had said earlier, there is a reason why I'm not like in the social circle of most of the coaches, is because they were all under the impression that I purposely knew that she was cheating, so I wanted to abuse that for the notoriety, the success. But like I got into like I don't even know. I went to LA and there's some guy that was just trying to like threaten me in my DMs. Oh, I'm gonna expose you for something that happened like 2 years ago. This and this. I'm like, dude, I had no clue she was cheating. What you're telling me right now is news to me. I just knew that she said she was going to India after that tournament. I never heard from her since. So I guess going to India meant that she got banned. So it was news to me. But aside from that, I think afterwards when I picked up Panday, Crisp, I think the roster was Panday, Crisp, Darcy, aka Mayu, Wavy, and Astralis. That is my favorite roster. So that team did not see the level of success of qualifying to a main event, but we definitely had the seeds to compete and to do well. That's the roster that won the Silvxs Invitational. That is the roster that still continued to beat signed teams. That is the roster that when we played against Immortals, we beat Immortals, we beat V1 like 13-0, 13-1 on a series of a best of 3 in GCA. That is the roster that I've had and seen the most success with. So yes, I can boil it down to my initial roster, succeeding GC2, and then the next roster succeeding in many numerous, smaller tourneys and stuff like that. But I think that is my defining AGP roster. Unfortunately, we didn't decide to stick together as a team, and that is a-okay. But I felt that from the first iteration of the roster down to the second iteration, we did nothing but get better. And from a coaching perspective, that was basically like my child. Like that entire team was basically my child. I saw it from start to finish. No matter how many hardships we had, the second we got Crisp and Panday, like Panday's a grinder. Like Panday still, I believe, got signed to like Misfits at a point, and then now they're still like on an FA squad, and they're just doing really well. I really like them. But everybody was grinding it. Like we were in the server about 8 hours a day. It was kind of unhealthy, but we took no breaks unless we really needed to. And for an entire month straight, we just did nothing but grind. Um,
Mhm.
so that entire experience definitely taught me like what stuff works, what doesn't work. Obviously, now I know to be a little bit more suspicious, I guess, of players. Um, if there's is any problem and stuff like that. But like I said, I think I guess like my problem, I guess, with Riot is just the fact that there's never any clarity. I feel
Mhm.
like if my player was cheating, they should have a way to detect it. Obviously we have Vanguard and stuff like that. And what's kind of funny is, history repeats itself. I mean,
Yep.
there was Malibu on, I think it was like Newt that was cheating, and nobody knew that until the very end. And Disguised Toast just removed this entire org from GC and just Val in general because cheaters and all this other stuff. So it's just kind of crazy how everything kind of goes full circle. That's actually why it was brought up to my attention that Bella was possibly cheating, was because I had made a tweet. Um, it wasn't even dissing. I guess I was just like bringing light to the Malibu situation, and somebody messaged me and said, "Oh, haha, that's pretty ironic considering that you abused a cheater and this and this." And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
honestly. So yeah, AGP at its core definitely taught me a lot of stuff. It was the first team that ever taught me how to run a roster. First team to ever truly get me into game changers. I was a coach for Trade Like Pros Prism prior, but I wouldn't say the experience from there to AGP was remotely the same. Um, and that was the team that led to a majority of my success in my history. But it's not going to be the last one.
Yeah, and from there on, you then coached in Velaris, and then obviously your current um team in Fish Taco Silvxs. And I remember Velaris also one of the other free agent teams that competed with the other signed orgs throughout this past year in 2023. For a moment, you guys were close to qualifying for the main event as well, and it's actually a team
Yes.
that featured Starbound as also a player that I talked to
Yeah.
right before or right around the time they were eventually signed by Evil Geniuses GC, and then they went on to that magical lower bracket run in Series 3 and then qualifying for Brazil and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How do you view the difference from coaching AGP to then Velaris and then your current team?
Um. So honestly, I think that Valaris felt more like everybody was more motivated. On AGP, we were together for about maybe a year and a few months. So eventually, I could notice that a few players started to burn out. I myself started to burn out, and we had a point where our roster just went into a depression. We weren't really doing too much. There were a few people that couldn't really make it, so we had to start trialing, and we trialed for months on end. Didn't really get anywhere with it. Decided to part ways with the roster. On Valaris, I did notice that everybody is very head forth in terms of what they wanted to do. So, for example, I could be like, okay, well, what does Starbound want to do? What does Avery want to do? And these are all people that are still succeeding. I think every GC team is definitely going to have a few players that kind of fall off. I think that's just how life works and how most of the rosters work, where they either have real life obligations or just anything else, or maybe they just don't have interest in the game anymore. But from then to moving on to TSX, I noticed that with TSX, I mean, we don't really have a super definitive roster at the moment, but the roster that went to LA, they're all very nice people. Um, TSX definitely has been, I guess, the most professional experience that I've had so far across any team. I really like the owners. They're very open and very open to just criticism and just having open lines of conversation. I felt like my time on Valaris, it was very short. I think I was there for about maybe a month or two. Um, but it definitely also was a just another learning experience. It's another stepping stone to get to where I need to be at. I don't know if TSX is ever going to be the end all be all, but again, everything is just okay. You go here, you learn what works. You go there, you know what works, and then I could put on my resume that hey, I coached the Starbound that made it to the GC Grand Finals and everything like that, and even Floor, like I coached Florescent back on Trade Like Pros for a bit when she was there. So it's just cool. I like just moving around, seeing what works, what doesn't work. Um, and just like high school, if there's a problem, I want to strive to fix it.
Yeah, and of course, and in talking about your time in GC, I'm curious as to why you decided to cover GC specifically. Of course,
Mhm.
you have your other. You might be looking into tier two and tier one as an area, as this the goal for most of the other top tier GC players. Trying to move up from just GC
Yeah.
to the higher levels and so. But why specifically um coaching GC? Why did you decide to do that?
So initially, the first org that I joined, which was the org that I joined whenever I was plat, that roster had Astralis on it, and it was a co-ed roster. It was me, her, a few of my other friends currently, and we grew to be really good friends. And she, coming to the end of that roster, she was like, "Oh, hey, there's this thing called Game Changers that's starting up. Our roster's not doing anything right now. I'm gonna kind of hop over to that scene and do, see what's up." So she moves over there. I believe she also moved to Trade Like Pros. And ever since then, we've kind of just been like this dynamic duo of like a coach and a player, just trying to see what works, picking up more people along the way. One of the members that are on TSX right now is actually one of the members that was on that TLP team as well. Her name is Miara. And we've all just been friends for about maybe 3 years now. And the main reason why I stick to GC though is because I want to help marginalized genders just succeed in the scene. I feel like the scene is very oversaturated in the co-ed scene, especially with everybody's kind of just cut and paste of each other. Like I know there's a stereotype of Valorant e-boy and Valorant e-girl and stuff like that, but I genuinely do feel that there's a lot of people in the co-ed scene that are just very not super dynamic in my eyes. Like I feel like there's always a lot of people that can be replaced, and GC has kind of taught me that there are these players that are coming in and Valorant's their first esport. You know, they're coming at the ages 16, 17, 18, coming into the scene, and they kind of need guidance and they need help and they need to feel comfortable and safe. And I feel like I can offer that to the players. So aside from coaching, Val, I'd say like I'm practically just like a team dad at this point. So everybody that's ever come underneath my wing, I help them out whether they're struggling with mental health issues, anything in their personal life that might be going on, or most people come in and they have different questions that they just want to ask, and I can provide not a professional opinion, but an opinion to kind of lead them in the right direction. And overall, I think I have a pretty good positive outlook, and I feel like every team that I've ever gone to and coached, they all have a part of me still with them. So I like to try to, like we said earlier, it doesn't matter how shaky the foundation is. If your foundation's broken, I'll tear it down and help you build a new one that works for you. So that way they can succeed later on. And again, it just goes to show like there's been a lot of players that I've coached that have succeeded, like Floor, like Panday, like Starbound. There's all these different types of players, and the reason why I like to stay is because I want to help people achieve their dreams.
This initiative of helping non-binary people and transgender people, where did that come from? For specifically from you, not just focusing in GC, but beyond that, like in life in general. Where did that initiative come from for you?
So I guess the initiative to, I mean, for me, it's just for all marginalized genders. I just feel like there's always been a position in my life where, especially growing up in Texas, I grew up with surrounded by a lot of racism. I myself am not white. I'm half Nigerian, half Colombian, um, and I look the part. So there's been a lot of times where I felt like I wasn't allowed into something or I wasn't given the correct opportunity unless it was by another like person of color, for example. And so there were a lot of times where I felt like, you know, there's one person out of maybe the 10 teachers in my elementary school that actually like me, that are willing to give me a chance, that won't call me, slurs or something like that. Growing up, there were a lot of teachers, especially in like my middle school and early high school, that had racial comments towards me, or just telling me like, oh, you don't have the Asian work ethic, like why do you do this and this, and it just making me question myself. And so I feel like it's my duty to also aid and try to help people to get into a scene that maybe there's not a lot of people that are supportive of them. I've kind of run into a lot of coaches in the past that are no longer here in the scene that kind of just come in, they're like, oh, GC's free low, it's easy money, this and this, and then they get in and they have these weird opinions. A lot of them say like, oh, well, women just suck, that's why I'm here, because I like to just tell them what to do and this and this and blah blah blah. They're just not good, so that's why I'm here to help. But it's more so that I feel like over the course of time, because I had no clue what being trans or non-binary meant at all, especially whenever I first started playing Val. It wasn't until I started coaching in the scene that I started to learn and realize, okay, well, I could see exactly where you guys are coming from, I could see the background and everything else that you guys have gone through. Let me make this a safe place for you.
Hmm. Hmm. And how do you view the sort of sentiment towards non-binary transgender people in GC? Because we've seen in recent times, plenty of conversation about mental, verbal, physical abuse towards these affected marginalized genders and people and stuff like that. And we've also seen various people within esports scene, you know, give their 2 cents and just do it in a way that negatively affects them, just sort of alienates um um marginalized gender people and stuff like that. I think the clearest example of that is Semler and his comments are regarding players like Empathy and Flores and people that I've talked to
Hmm.
earlier on last year, like the late stretch of last year. And so how do you view the sentiment of towards um non-binary transgender people in game changes, as someone that's been working towards helping these people?
Um, so the way I view it is that at the end of the day, everybody is a human sitting down at their PC. I personally don't see or know. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I have no clue, but I truly don't think that there is any biological difference between what you're born as and what you then are later in your life and what you realize that you are. I don't think that there's a difference. I think that the scene and a lot of people that do make these negative comments are very ignorant. Um, and like I said, at the end of the day, everybody has a keyboard and a mouse. I tell people no matter what, like I know in early sentiment growing up throughout the GC scene was just everybody being concerned with like, oh, non-binary players and trans players are better than cis women. And I feel like again, that sentiment just comes from either jealousy or it comes from ignorance. And the way that I see it is, I'm not trying to hype her up. I mean, maybe, but like Astralis, for example, she's been playing video games since she came out the womb. Like her dad put her on a PC at the age of like 2, and she was top 500 in Overwatch and all this other stuff. And again, it's upbringing. Like she played video games for a while. Like, of course she's gonna do really well. It's like Michael Jordan. Like Michael Jordan would practice day in day out. Like you can't say that just because somebody's born a certain way or they look a certain way or they feel a certain way that like, oh, this person just all of a sudden has an advantage over me. I think it's just ignorance. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
whenever it comes down to these negative comments and everything like that, I kind of noticed on Twitter that one negative comment slips out, the rest just kind of like pour out. I don't recall the guy's name. I think he was like an Overwatch caster or something like that, and he was just going at it with like Floor on Twitter. And the way that I see it is like again, it's like an avalanche. It's like once they say something, they don't really want to apologize, so they just continue to go in and go in. I'm like, dude, what do you get harassed? Like, why are you harassing a little girl? Like, it makes no sense. So I just feel like in the scene, a lot of people should just learn to be more accepting. Anytime that there are negative comments and stuff like that, just reassure each other, that all of it is just false. Like again, just let those people be upset. Um, and it doesn't really matter again like who you are at the end of the day. You guys are all players. I know that the scene is mostly focused towards marginalized genders. I would love to see like players like Floor go into the co-ed scene. If one day she says, hey, you know what, I don't really want to, so be it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
whatever works. But at the end of the day, again, it's everybody's their own person. Everybody has two legs, hopefully, two arms, hopefully, some fingers. Everybody can sit here and play their respective video game. Um, and that's pretty much it. I think that the comments are just unwelcomed.
Mm-hmm. And interesting that you brought up pretty a few times in this conversation as to you coaching Flores and exactly when exactly did that happen and what teams was it that you were coaching Flores and what were the names of the teams and also what was she like as a player during those early days of her career that then paved the way towards her just being a beast in right now in GC.
Okay, so it was on one team. It was Trade Like Pros, and it was for about maybe a month and a half. So I didn't really coach her for too long. It was very off and on because at the time she was in high school. I'm not too sure if she dropped out or not or she finished. But at the time she was very young. It was right when she hit 16. And I spent about like a month and a half with her. And I would say that back then I definitely realized that she was not a team player. She was very reminiscent of kind of like what the characteristics that make her very good now. It's like she can win her ones, she can go for more, she can just overextend, get all these kills, and it was like, oh, she's crazy. But one of the biggest things that I spent time with her on was trying to work as a team. And if I go back into my DMs, I'm pretty sure that I can see her asking me like, hey, what are your opinions on me from practice? Let's talk about this, and this. And one big focal point that I'm pretty sure she's carried into every single team afterwards is that she was always looking to become this team player. A lot of people have this precedent or this idea that fluorescence just, oh, I just 1v9, I don't care. Like, after she won huge, she was a woman of little words, but she has always been striving in the direction to try to become a better team player. Now, whether people say, because again, nobody knows like the ins and outs. Like people can see everything from the outside and be like, oh, she just runs it down, this, and this. But I guarantee you that's practiced over and over again for countless hours. And I mean, nobody really said the same thing about tens. So I feel as though, Flora is definitely up next. Whenever I first met her, she was really nice. Pretty sure she still is nice. We haven't really spoken in too long, but she was just this player that reminded me of myself. Like whenever I came to Splitgame, whenever I came to Valorant, whenever I was in high school, middle school, elementary school, anything that interested me, I was there for it. And every single time that she would have a problem, she would try to strive to find a solution. If she had no clue, she'd come to her coach.
Mhm.
So she's just always been the type of person that um, just strives for greatness.
Would it be fair to say that Florescent is the person that stood out the most to you? Of all of the players that you've coached throughout your career in round, is she the one that stands out the most? And if not, who else do you feel fits that bill?
Um, I don't think she's the one that has stuck out the most. I think that she's definitely the one that sticks out in terms of success. But I honestly think that I can't really pinpoint a player. I think people have asked me this in the past. I could just pinpoint again that one AGP roster of it just being like Chris Panday, Wavy, Darcy, and Astralis, because as a whole, we got to a point where we weren't too focused again on like individual player stuff. We were sitting there talking about micro, macro, what to do, our protocols, just focusing more so on like what we can do as a team. And I don't think there's ever been a roster yet that I've gotten to that point where I'm not individually growing a different person. It was kind of autonomous. So it's like we would leave, I find out that on their free time, they're still talking about practice. They're still doing like, all this other stuff. And because of Starbound, I've been able to be in calls with the EG players. I've spoken to Thea, Pyrapixel, Starbound. I've been in calls with just all of them there, and they kind of have like a very similar environment of interest. It's like even during their off time, they could be playing like Stardew Valley, still talking about the game. And again, it's just that drive. So I would say that in terms of success, she definitely is up there. Um, but I personally cannot pick out any sort of player just as of yet. Who knows? Maybe it'll change in this coming year. Um, but I've definitely had a bunch of players that each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and that's pretty much another big thing too. Is that I never strive to like fill the pie. So whenever I look at a player, you can break it down into different things. You can break it down to mental, communication, mechanics, game knowledge, all this different stuff. And there's never been one player that fits it all. Every single player is like a different puzzle. And it's kind of like a computer. I always use this analogy where I always tell my players, like, hey guys, you guys are all like computer parts. Don't worry about, you guys don't all have to be, tens. You guys don't all have to go in there and, frag out and do everything like that. Do your individual job perfectly, and over time we will bring up those weaknesses. So that is why I can't really pinpoint who's better, because everybody's better in their own different facet.
It's quite a good way to view players and how you are looking to develop them and just have them be in a position where they can then grow beyond their current position and just be the kind of player that that they are looking to be. People like Forrest and Starbound, people like them, reach to that same high level. Um,
Yeah.
what do you view as your ultimate goal? When all is said and done, what do you view as like the one thing that once you accomplish it, that's it. Anything else can't surpass it.
Um, Honestly, I think my goal is to definitely be able to make it to the uh, the big GC tournament at the end of the year. There's been plenty of times where I sat here and I'm like, yo, where's it going to be at this year? I think some rumors are like Japan or even Cali for this year. I'd love to go to either. So I definitely want to make it there, but my goal is to make it there under specific conditions. I want to make it there with players that I know deserve it. I wanted to make it there with a pretty good record. honestly, at the start of this year, I'm not really looking to start out with a bang. We don't have our roster yet, and GC just got announced to be like this month, so we're kind of in a scramble. But definitely with GC 2 and 3, I'm definitely looking to have a lot more success. But I just want to meet certain criteria. You know, there's certain goals that I want to do personally, um, whether it be like in life. One of my biggest goals is to try to explain this to my parents because they're still kind of like boomers in a sense where they don't really see long-term success. And I'm not doing it specifically for them, but I want to have something that I could be like, oh, hey guys, look, it worked out. You know, and this year was kind of that year for me. I went to LA, you know, we had this like a run in GC. It wasn't really the best, but just the fact that I was able to get there off of previous achievements and accomplishments meant a lot to me. And so I would say that out of everything, my biggest goal is to make it there and hopefully be there with the same roster that we either start out with GC1 or GC2. I don't want anybody to feel like they need to give up on their dream this year. I've had plenty of players in the past that are just like, I'm just going to throw in the towel. So I just want to make sure that I can be that beacon in the dark for everybody to, again, come back together. We go through it thick and thin and we succeed and hopefully come out on top. I just want to qualify.
If there's one of all of the attributes that you feel you have as a coach and as an individual, that has helped you do your work in esports slash pro Valorant, if there's one thing that you feel stands out the most in a positive way, like the biggest advantage, the biggest like aspect that has helped you the most,
hmm
as an individual, what would that be and why?
I think the biggest value is understanding people and how people work. I think that my entire life, I've never looked at things as black and white. I've always looked at things holistically, and I take a lot of things into consideration. I feel as though that can be abused at certain points because some people could be like, oh well, I'm good on Wednesdays, but on Tuesdays, I'm just not good, and it's like, well, let's work on that Tuesday. So I think one of the biggest attributes that I have is just my ability to basically be able to read the room at all different situations of time. Try to figure out, okay, well, what is the mental block? What is the mechanical block? Always providing different solutions, always being open to changing different things. Because a few things that I've noticed that whether it be co-ed coaches or other GC coaches or some people in general do that I just don't do in particular that a lot of players are like, oh, I love the way you coach. I love the way you do this, and this, is that I'm willing to dive into certain topics. So I won't just sit there and address the whole team or force the whole team to do what I want to do. I've never done that at all. We barely use Valoplant as it is because a lot of it is through repetition and making sure they know what their mistakes are. We do have a few concrete plays and stuff like that, but aside from that, I want to teach my players how to win because I always treat it as when they leave from me and go off to different teams, I want them to succeed. That's been my biggest attribute. So I will teach you how to win. I'll teach you what it takes to win, how to recognize why you're losing, how to come back from it. Um, I can teach you the macro, the micro. I can teach you the how to come back, mentally. One of the biggest games that I always referenced was the Loud versus Fnatic series on Icebox, where Fnatic just came back, and I remember watching that VOD at least 10 times, just breaking it down with every single person I talked to. Um, so I'd say it's just my willingness to never back down from a challenge and to always sit there and try to just strive for success. Um, and like I said, at the end of the day, if somebody comes to me and they're a Yoru one trick, I'll hopefully be able to make them into a Yoru one trick god on no matter what map, no matter what comp. Hopefully, try to expand their little agent pool a little bit because I have had some people like that in the past. They're like, oh, I only play Arena, I only play Brim, um, especially on my collegiate team. But yeah, I would say that's just the biggest attribute for me. And I've always just been told that throughout life, I don't know, I've just always had a different outlook on things. And I think that that is what benefits me.
It was a it's been a massive pleasure picking your brain and just knowing more about you, Iroo, and your life and your pro Valorant career. That about wraps up all of my questions for this interview. Do you have any final words to share? Any like final things that you want to say to anyone out there in the world?
Yeah. no matter how tough things get, you guys will always succeed. You'll always get it. If you don't succeed at first, try to create a system or a plan to help you get there. Because there are a lot of times, especially in esports, where you're not winning. In most of these tournaments, all the tournaments, only one team can win it all. So you have to get comfortable with losing, but seeing what things are a win in the short term. What smaller things are you actually winning at to succeed later in the long term? And at the end of the day, just have fun. But have fun and always strive for greatness. And if anybody's watching this that's a free agent, please have the same exact worth ethic, no matter if you're getting paid or if there's a promise or a hope of getting paid in the future, a salary. I guarantee you will succeed a lot more. Because a lot of players, they like to sit here and they say, well, if I was making 8K a month, of course I'd do this. Like, do it now, you know? Don't just wait until you guys get signed. And I do believe in every single person in Game Changers, and I do definitely hope to all teams, all players, all coaches, that you guys all have a fantastic 2024. And I'm looking forward to competing against you all. And if you guys have any questions, just hit me up on Twitter. Don't know if I'm allowed to plug it, but it's Iroo FPS on Twitter. And yeah, let's get talking. If you guys want to play some games, stuff like that, I'm down. But I hope you guys all succeed. And thank you, Pedro, for the interview.
No, for sure, no doubt. Always good seeing one of my Houston brothers do well in the esports space. I always want to give some love to the people back home, and for really I really do appreciate you, Iru.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.